Welcome to the Swazzle Puppet Studio. I'm Sean.
And I'm Patrick.
In our last episode, we showed you how to make arm gaskets to attach your puppet arms to your puppet body.
In this episode, we'll show you how to make a puppet mouth palate.
Let's get started.
Now that we've built the foam head, it's time to make the puppet's mouth palate. This mouth palate will be made up of 4 main components: a wooden mouth plate, a foam palate, a leather thumb loop, and a rubber finger grip. It takes a lot of stuff to make a puppet talk. For this step, you'll need your puppet head, mouth palate pattern, a small sheet of 1/8" craft plywood, tracing paper, and a ruler. You'll also need scissors, dyed 1/2" reticulated foam, pattern weights, a Sharpie, a Personna blade, and contact cement, plus a pencil, pattern paper, masking tape, leather, a needle and upholstery thread, and 1" thick rubber shoe sole material. We'll also be using a bandsaw, belt sander, and drill press.
Most puppets we build have a wooden plate on the top and bottom jaw. Now we wanted Herrick to have a very flexible mouth, so we're putting a wooden plate on the top jaw while the bottom jaw is just foam.
We'll make the wooden mouth plate first. Start by slicing a mouth in your foam head shape. Then use a Personna blade and scissors to hollow out the head. Finally, cut a little ledge on the inside of the puppet's foam lip. This is where your foam mouth palate will sit. Think of it as a little shelf. You'll also need to cut a little circle out of the bottom back of the foam head for the neck hole. To make the mouth plate, start by tracing the mouth plate pattern on the craft plywood. Use the bandsaw to cut out the general shape of the wooden plate. Remember to follow all manufacturer's safety guidelines when using power tools. Make some more refined cuts with the bandsaw, cutting just outside the pencil line. Use the belt sander to grind off any excess wood. Work slowly and carefully to make the shape as smooth as possible. Run the edge of the wood against the sandpaper to take off any rough edges. Compare the cut and sanded mouth plate with the puppet's head to make sure it fits. Next, we'll make the foam mouth palate. Start by tracing your wooden mouth plate onto a piece of tracing paper. Using the ruler and pencil, mark about 1" and a 1/2" from the bottom of the mouth plate. This will tell us where the hinge of the mouth will be.
Generally, you want a 3/4 to 1" gap between the top and bottom jaw. This gap will make it easier to move the mouth and help with flexibility.
Fold the tracing paper at the 1/2" mark. Cut the pattern out. Use the Sharpie to trace the mouth palate shape on the 1/2" piece of dyed foam. Make sure your foam is dry.
For tips on dyeing fabric with fabric dye, click here.
Use the Personna blade to cut out the foam shape. Make sure the wood plate fits on the foam palate. And make sure the foam palate fits in the puppet's mouth. Use contact cement to glue the wooden plate to the foam mouth palate. Always follow the manufacturer's safety guidelines when using contact cement. Work in a well-ventilated space, wear gloves, and a respirator.
Next, we'll make the leather thumb loop.
Start by making a small cone out of craft paper and masking tape. Trim off the edges. You want it to be just big enough for your thumb. Once you know your thumb fits, use scissors to cut the tube in half vertically. Clean up the shape and trace it on tracing paper. Fold the tracing paper in half and true up the shape. Cut out the thumb loop pattern and use the Sharpie to trace it onto a piece of leather. Cut out the leather shape. Leather is very hard to sew, so we're going to use a drill press to make small holes in the leather before we stitch it together. Use the Sharpie to make small marks on both sides of the leather. Use the drill press and a very fine drill bit to drill holes where you marked. Use contact cement to glue the edges of the leather together. Use a needle and upholstery thread to sew the leather loop together. Pull it tight, tie a knot, and cut off the extra. Use contact cement to glue the thumb loop to the bottom of the foam mouth palate. Test the puppet out to make sure the thumb loop is placed in the best spot. Once again, you guessed it, make sure the foam palate and thumb loop fit comfortably in the puppet's head. For the final piece of the puzzle, we'll make the rubber finger grip. Use tracing paper to cut out a slight horseshoe shape for the finger grip pattern. Use the Sharpie to trace that shape onto the rubber. Cut out the rubber shape with a bandsaw. Sand the edges with the belt sander. You want the finger grip to be comfortable for your fingertips. Now it's time to glue your finger grip in place. Start by lightly scoring the back of the rubber shape with a Personna blade. Bend back the rubber and apply a thin layer of contact cement. Glue the rubber grip to the wooden plate. Apply contact cement to the edge of the foam mouth palate and the inner lip of the puppet's head. Once the contact cement is tacky, place the foam palate in the puppet's head. The palate should rest on the little foam shelf. There you have it! Your puppet mouth palate has been built and installed.
In our next episode, we'll show you how to custom dye puppet fleece. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a single step.
And we'll see you next time in the Swazzle Puppet Studio. Goodbye!